CFO of the Trump Organization and the Trump Organization itself. Well, joining me right now to discuss all the particulars of this is tax attorney John Milikowsky. John, so good to see you. Thanks for being with us here on News Now from Fox to discuss this. A big story of the day. What were your first impressions? You know, this is, profiling some of these actions back 15 years. So this is quite extensive. What do you think, going forward, now that this indictment has been brought down, what can we expect?
Well, there's definitely going to be some subpoenas, and of course, they're targeting the CFO who has all the financial information for the primary organization. But there's been his tax returns have been audited for numerous years, even before he became president. So that's definitely part of it. They have some information as to that. And the indictments, which are focused on fringe benefits and payoffs, they typically, you would pay an executive and put them on payroll, so it obviously escapes federal and state payroll taxes, and might be an indication of other crimes being committed.
And yeah, let's get into some of those benefits. Some of them include, like you were mentioning, tuition for Allan Weisselberg's grandchildren, rent, I believe country club memberships, things like that, that were off the books, apparently. And so kind of, going forward, what is Allan Weisselberg really facing? Like, how many particular, years in prison could this bring if he is convicted?
Well, I can't speak as to New York law, but on, definitely in a federal issue, we see a lot of these cases and high-profile cases, and it could, be an indication of potential money laundering. Anytime you have payments to somebody that's not being reported in an accounting system and is not being paid, reported in a corporate return, there's obviously potential wrongdoing and it's escaping taxation, and they're doing it for a reason, right? They don't want to disclose some other line transactions. Maybe the payments are not what they're really being intended for, not to really to pay the tuition, but for some other payback, other transaction unrelated to what they're being paid for.
Yeah, and John, we're just showing some video from earlier today of Allan Weisselberg there at the courthouse. The indictment, just to go into it a little bit more, Weisselberg's been with the company for almost 50 years. It's alleging that he illegally avoided paying taxes on $1.76 million in benefits going back 15 years. Now, in situations like this, could he possibly avoid jail time by just settling and paying this back in some type of fine?
Well, I think that's always a possibility in some of the cases. They might be looking at a potential plea agreement and payback of taxes, penalties, and interest, but it could be politically charged, and certainly they could be using his statements and testimony maybe to go after Trump himself and other people in the organization. So obviously they're going to use him as the leverage to get additional information.
Yeah, and of course, I just want to read in part some of the statement from the former president today, saying that after years of investigating, dozens of subpoenas, millions of documents, and millions of dollars of taxpayer money, the Manhattan DA's office has decided to charge select Trump entities with providing a car, an apartment, and other employee benefits to one of its longtime executives. It's not about the law. This is about politics. The former president is saying exactly what the indictment is saying, that they did provide these benefits to Allan Weisselberg over all these years.
Right. Well, the question is whether this was reported as part of his compensation, right? Is it going to be listed on a payroll tax return? Did they pay taxes on it? Was it paid by the entity he's employed by, or through some other sources? How did he receive those benefits and those funds? So all these are going to be very relevant for the district attorney when they're analyzing the case.
And normally in cases like this, John, if you're representing someone, what is your advice to someone right now like Allan Weisselberg at the moment? We've seen such an extensive display with the grand jury, the number of documents, evidence, witnesses from Manhattan DA Cy Vance Jr. So right now, if you were Weisselberg's attorney, what would you be advising him?
Well, definitely cooperate, because less cooperations mean they're going to be doing more and sending more subpoenas out and finding additional facts that you may not want them to find. So cooperation is definitely going to be the key. And obviously, telling the truth, but doesn't mean that there could be multiple sides. Two people can disagree as to a transaction, right? So there's definitely going to be a requirement to disclose what the transaction was and to justify it. And we've had cases before, money laundering cases, $150 million money laundering cases. We tried to put together the legitimacy of a business transaction, and not simply that it was given to a person for illicit benefits or they was trying to escape taxation, but there's a legitimate reason for it. So they're going to have to provide some explanation as to why the transaction was done the way it was done.
And just last question for you, John. What does this mean for the future of the Trump organization itself? We know that Cy Vance Jr., some would say that he's been trying to go after the former president and get him on some of these counts. That was not the case today. But do you think he could be eventually ensnared in this investigation going forward?
Well, it's hard really to make any statements as to that because we don't have any of the evidence. It's under seal. But they're certainly going to look for connections and whether Trump authorized any of these transactions, whether he was involved in it. Again, Allan, Weisselberg, the CFO, is going to have all that information. He's been with the organization for many years, so his testimony is going to be clearly important if they want to go after Trump and the other people in the organization who were involved in that.
All right, tax attorney John Milikowsky coming on News Now from Fox to discuss all the particulars of this. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, when we come back, we will be getting another report, this time out of Phoenix, Arizona, when we will be talking about a Supreme Court ruling today that affected the state and voting here in the state. Stay tuned for that. We'll be back in 2 minutes.